futures all day long, turning sparks into burning light. We keep the world alive tonight. With a heartbeat, the rhythm, the rise, Maxivas, the wind beneath our skies. Entrepreneur support systems call, lifting small dreams to stand tall. With passion and drive, we never rest. We never rest.
Welcome, viewers and listeners, to Entrepreneur Support System Podcast, Episode 10. Lydia, I have noticed something about the small businesses that survive economic challenges versus those that do not. The difference is rarely about the size of their cash reserves alone.
You are right, Ansel. It is about how quickly they can redirect resources when conditions change. The survivors have operational tightness. The casualties have operational porousness.
And porousness manifests first as time leakage. Hours disappear into activities that feel productive but generate no forward motion.
Which means financial risk is often a lagging indicator of time mismanagement. By the time the bank account reveals the problem, the habits are entrenched.
That is what we are addressing today, the mechanical link between how founders spend hours and how businesses accumulate risk.
Because every leaked hour is a forfeited option, and options are what keep businesses alive when certainty vanishes.
Our topic is reducing time leakage to lower financial risk. Let us start with the fundamental question. What is time leakage in the context of entrepreneurship?
Time leakage is the gap between time allocated and value produced. It is work that consumes resources but does not advance strategic objectives, generate revenue, or reduce risk. It includes meetings without decisions, emails without clarity, projects without completion criteria, and interruptions without filters. The critical detail is that time leakage feels legitimate while it's happening. It is camouflaged as productivity.
That camouflage is the problem. Founders confuse motion with progress, availability with leadership, and responsiveness with effectiveness. They end each day exhausted and each month surprised that the needle barely moved.
Exactly, and the exhaustion provides psychological cover because suffering feels like evidence of commitment. But fatigue without results is not commitment. It is inefficiency wearing the costume of dedication.
How does time leakage directly create financial risk?
Through 5 primary mechanisms. First, opportunity cost. Every hour spent on low-value activity is an hour not spent on revenue generation, customer acquisition, or strategic partnerships. The business forgoes income it could have captured. Second, execution delays. When projects drift because attention is fragmented, time to market lengthens, competitive advantage erodes, and first-mover benefits disappear. Third, margin compression. Time leakage in operations means higher labor costs per unit delivered, which squeezes profitability even when revenue grows. Fourth, cash conversion cycle extension. When administrative inefficiency delays invoicing, collections, or procurement, working capital requirements increase and cash flow volatility rises. Fifth, strategic drift. When founders spend their days in reactive mode, they lose the capacity to identify threats early or pivot effectively, which amplifies existential risk.
Those mechanisms are precise, and they compound. A founder who leaks 20 hours per week loses over 1,000 hours annually. If that founder's strategic thinking is worth $200 per hour in enterprise value creation, the business has forfeited $200,000 in unrealized growth.
And that calculation assumes the leaked time has zero negative value. In reality, time leakage often creates additional problems: miscommunication from rushed decisions, errors from fragmented attention, relationships damaged by inconsistent follow-through. The true cost includes both what was not created and what was actively harmed.
Let us make this tangible. What are the most common sources of time leakage that founders fail to recognize?
The first is context switching. Research shows that transitioning between tasks can consume up to 40% of productive time, depending on task complexity. Founders who check email between meetings, who answer Slack messages while writing proposals, who take calls during focused work sessions are hemorrhaging cognitive capacity. Each switch incurs a recovery penalty that most people underestimate by a factor of 3.
The second is meeting proliferation without discipline. Meetings multiply to fill available time unless constrained by protocol. Founders attend meetings because they were invited, not because their presence creates value. They schedule meetings because conversation feels like action, not because a decision requires synchronous discussion. The result is calendars filled with events that exist to justify their own existence.
The third is scope ambiguity. When projects lack clear boundaries, definition criteria, or completion standards, work expands indefinitely. Teams revisit decisions, recreate deliverables, and renegotiate expectations. This is not perfectionism, it is the absence of initial precision, and it wastes exponentially more time than upfront clarity would have required.
The fourth is communication inefficiency. Founders who rely on verbal updates instead of documented systems create information asymmetry that requires constant re-explanation. Every question that gets asked repeatedly represents a system failure. Every email chain that could have been a checklist represents leaked capacity.
The fifth is decision avoidance. When founders delay difficult choices, they don't eliminate the time cost. They distribute it across every subsequent day as worry, contingency planning, and strategic hedging. A decision postponed is a tax on all future attention until the decision is finally made.
And the sixth is misaligned delegation. When founders assign tasks without sufficient context, authority, or success criteria, they guarantee rework. The delegated task returns incomplete, incorrect, or irrelevant, requiring founder intervention that negates the efficiency delegation was meant to create.
Each of these sources shares a common trait. They are invisible in real time, but visible in aggregate. One unfocused meeting feels harmless. 50 across a quarter represents a full work week invested with no return.
Let us address the connection to financial risk more directly. How quickly does time leakage translate into measurable financial vulnerability?
Faster than most founders expect, because financial risk compounds while time leakage accumulates. Consider a services business with thin margins. If time leakage reduces billable hours by 15% and the business operates on 20% net margins, profitability can disappear entirely within a single quarter. The business appears busy, revenue may even grow, but the cash flow deteriorates because the cost structure has inflated invisibly.
Or consider a product business preparing for launch. If time leakage delays the release by 8 weeks, the business burns through its runway without corresponding revenue. Investors lose confidence, and the probability of raising the next round declines. The delay may feel like operational friction, but it manifests as an existential threat.
There's also a liquidity dimension. Businesses with tight time management can respond to market changes within days. Businesses with chronic time leakage require weeks to redirect effort because their capacity is already fully consumed by inefficiency. When a crisis arrives or an opportunity emerges, they lack the maneuverability to act, which transforms ordinary volatility into catastrophic risk.
That maneuverability point is critical. Financial risk is not just about having cash, it's about having optionality, the ability to choose between paths when circumstances shift. Time leakage destroys optionality by consuming the bandwidth needed to evaluate and execute alternatives.
Well said. A business with excess capacity can experiment, negotiate, and pivot. A business operating at false saturation, where everyone is busy but little is achieved, has no capacity for strategic adjustment. They're locked into their current trajectory regardless of whether that trajectory still makes sense.
How can founders accurately measure their own time leakage?
3 methods provide clarity. First, time tracking with categorical honesty. For 2 weeks, log every 30-minute block under one of 4 categories: revenue generating, strategic planning, operational necessity, or leakage. Founders who complete this exercise discover that 30 to 50% of their time falls into the leakage category, which shocks them into corrective action. Second, output auditing. Identify the 3 most material outcomes that would advance the business this quarter. Then trace backward to determine what percentage of your time directly contributed to those outcomes. If the answer is below 40%, leakage is severe. Third, decision velocity measurement. Track how long it takes from identifying a problem to implementing a solution. If that duration exceeds 1 week for non-capital decisions, time leakage is creating drag that will compound into risk.
I would add a fourth method, revenue per available hour analysis. Take total revenue and divide by the number of working hours across the organization. Then compare that figure quarter over quarter. If revenue per hour declines while headcount and activity increases, time leakage is growing faster than the business.
That metric is particularly revealing because it exposes inefficiency that revenue growth can mask. A business can double in size while becoming less efficient, which makes it more fragile, not stronger.
What are the highest leverage interventions for reducing time leakage?
The first is ruthless calendar auditing. Founders should review every recurring meeting and ask 3 questions. Does this meeting produce a decision? Does my presence change the outcome? Could this be asynchronous communication instead? Any meeting that fails all 3 tests should be eliminated immediately, not rescheduled or reformed, eliminated.
The second is decision protocols. Establish clear frameworks for common decisions so that judgment is reserved for genuinely novel situations. For example, create a written policy for pricing exceptions, resource allocation, and hiring approval. When a situation arises, apply the protocol. This reduces decision fatigue and eliminates the time spent recreating logic for repetitive choices.
The third is communication architecture. Replace synchronous communication with asynchronous documentation wherever possible. Status updates become written reports. Questions become searchable FAQs. Approvals become workflow automation. This creates a knowledge base that scales without consuming additional founder time.
The fourth is scope discipline. Before starting any project, document the definition of done in measurable terms. What does complete look like? What are the acceptance criteria? What is explicitly out of scope? This 10-minute investment prevents weeks of drift and rework.
The fifth is interruption containment. Batch communication into designated windows rather than maintaining continuous availability. Turn off notifications. Schedule office hours for team questions. Protect deep work blocks with the same commitment you protect board meetings. This alone can reclaim 15 to 20 hours per week for high-value focus.
The sixth is delegation with clarity. When assigning work, provide context on why it matters, authority to make defined decisions, and success criteria that eliminate ambiguity. This upfront investment prevents the downstream cost of managing poorly delegated tasks.
And the seventh is strategic subtraction. Founders should review all activities and ask what they can stop doing entirely. Not optimize, not delegate, stop. Every business accumulates initiatives that made sense at one point but no longer justify their existence. Eliminating them frees capacity without requiring additional resources.
Let us discuss the relationship between time leakage and team dynamics. How does the founder's behavior around time management affect organizational culture?
Founders model what is acceptable. If the founder attends unnecessary meetings, the team assumes meetings are how work happens. If the founder responds to messages immediately, the team expects instant availability. If the founder tolerates scope creep, the team stops protecting project boundaries. The culture around time is set from the top, and it compounds through every layer of the organization.
Which means that reducing time leakage at the founder level creates permission for the entire organization to operate more efficiently. Conversely, a founder who leaks time trains the organization to waste it.
Exactly. And there's a trust dimension as well. When founders demonstrate disciplined time management, teams trust that their own time will be respected. When founders are chaotic, teams become defensive and hoard capacity because they expect it to be wasted.
How does technology interact with time leakage?
Technology is a force multiplier in both directions. Well-implemented systems reduce leakage by automating repetitive work, centralizing information, and enabling asynchronous collaboration. Poorly implemented technology increases leakage by adding complexity, requiring maintenance, and creating new interruption channels. The determining factor is intentionality. Technology adopted without clear process improvement goals typically increases leakage. Technology deployed to solve specific bottlenecks typically reduces them.
I have observed that founders often adopt tools because they are popular or affordable, not because they solve a measured problem. The result is a fragmented tech stack that requires constant context switching and manual integration, which creates more leakage than it eliminates.
That is precisely right. The rule should be simple. Do not adopt a new tool unless you can articulate the specific time savings it will produce and measure whether those savings materialize. Otherwise, you are collecting software subscriptions, not building infrastructure.
Let us address the psychological barriers. Why do founders resist measuring and reducing their own time leakage?
For 3 reasons. First, being busy feels productive. Founders equate activity with progress and worry that reducing activity means reducing effort. They do not yet understand that effort without direction is motion without velocity. Second, time leakage often serves an emotional function. Staying busy avoids confronting strategic uncertainty. Attending meetings provides social validation. Responding instantly creates a sense of control. Removing these activities requires facing the discomfort they were masking. Third, founders fear that efficiency will reveal their dispensability. If the business can operate without their constant involvement, they question their role and value.
Those fears are understandable but misguided. The founder who is indispensable for daily operations has built a job, not a business. The founder who is indispensable for strategic direction has built an asset. Reducing time leakage is how you transition from one to the other.
And that transition is what enables scale, exit optionality, and personal sustainability. A business that requires the founder's constant presence cannot grow beyond the founder's capacity, cannot be sold for meaningful value, and cannot provide the life flexibility that most founders originally sought.
One final question. What is the relationship between time leakage and long-term competitive advantage?
It's inverse and exponential. Companies that eliminate time leakage can iterate faster, respond to market changes more rapidly, and compound strategic improvements more consistently than competitors who tolerate inefficiency. Over time, this creates a widening performance gap that appears as superior execution but originates from superior time management. The businesses that dominate their markets are not always the ones with the best ideas. They're the ones who can implement good ideas before competitors finish debating them.
Speed is an undervalued moat, and speed comes from operational tightness, which comes from eliminating time leakage. The chain is direct.
And because most businesses tolerate chronic leakage, the ones that address it systematically gain disproportionate advantage. This is not about working harder, it's about removing friction so that existing effort produces exponentially better results.
Before we close, it must be said clearly, entrepreneurs matter.
They convert uncertainty into employment, ideas into infrastructure, and potential into economic reality. They absorb personal risk so that others can experience stability, and they do so with incomplete information and insufficient resources.
When they succeed, entire communities benefit. When they struggle silently, the losses ripple far beyond their own balance sheets. That's why protecting entrepreneurial capacity is not a personal favor, it's economic infrastructure.
That's why conversations like this exist, to equip founders with frameworks that reduce suffering without reducing ambition, to provide language for struggles that feel isolating but are actually universal, to offer systems that work when willpower fails.
And it's also why we are proud to be supported by Maxavira.online.
Maxavira stands for Maximizing Income Velocity with AI-driven Leverage. Their mission is to help founders reclaim time, sharpen execution, and replace chronic reactivity with intelligent systems. They understand that the highest use of technology is not to work faster, but to eliminate unnecessary work.
Their support makes the entrepreneur support system possible, and their tools address exactly what we discussed today, the systematic reduction of time leakage through automation, clarity, and operational discipline.
To everyone who listens, returns, reflects, and applies what is shared here, your discipline is what separates sustainable success from temporary activity. Attention is the rarest resource you possess, and the fact that you invest it in becoming more effective rather than merely busier signals that you understand the difference. If you are new to the Entrepreneur Support System podcast, you are welcome here. This is a space for builders who value excellence, systems, and results. We invite you to join our community and support the work at patreon.com/patreon.com/c.Insight Emporium by CEO Bulletin BIZSENTALBG.
Dreamers up before the dawn, building futures all day long, turning sparks into burning light. We keep the world alive tonight. With a heartbeat, the rhythm, the rise, Maxivas, the wind beneath our skies. Entrepreneur support systems call, lifting small dreams to stand tall. With passion